Olivia Carter stared at the rejection email on her laptop screen, the 20th one this month. At 24 years old with a marketing degree from a decent university, she thought finding a job would be easier. But the reality of post-graduation life had hit her like a freight train. Her savings account was nearly empty, rent was due in a week, her mother's concerned phone calls were becoming daily occurrences. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca, her college roommate and closest friend. "Stop moping. We're going out tonight." "No excuses," Olivia groaned and typed back. "Not in the mood, Becca." Within seconds, her phone rang. "Listen here, Carter." Rebecca's voice was firm but loving. "You've been sending out resumes and crying into ice cream for 3 months. You need a break. There's a networking mixer tonight at the Apex Lounge. Rich people, potential connections, free drinks. You're coming." "I can't afford to go to places like the Apex," Olivia protested. "It's a professional event. Free entry. Just wear that black dress I know you still have and meet me there at 8. And Liv, wash your hair, please." Olivia looked at her reflection in the dark laptop screen. Rebecca had a point. She looked terrible. 3 hours later, Olivia stood in front of the Apex Lounge, feeling completely out of place. The building was all glass and steel, the kind of establishment where she imagined people discussed million-dollar deals over cocktails she couldn't pronounce. Her black dress suddenly felt cheap and worn. "You look amazing." Rebecca appeared beside her, linking their arms together. "Now, stop looking like you're about to face a firing squad and come inside." The lounge was sophisticated and dimly lit with soft jazz playing in the background. Beautiful people in expensive clothes, mingled with champagne flutes, their laughter floating through the air like music. Olivia felt her anxiety spike. "I'll get us drinks," Rebecca announced and disappeared into the crowd before Olivia could object. Left alone, Olivia made her way to a quiet corner near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The view was breathtaking, thousands of lights twinkling against the dark sky. "You're beautiful, isn't it?" The voice came from beside her, deep and smooth like aged whiskey. Olivia turned and her breath caught in her throat. The man standing there was possibly the most attractive person she had ever seen in real life. He was tall, with dark hair that looked artfully messy, strong jawline, and eyes so intensely blue they seemed to glow in the dim lighting. His suit probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. "It is," she managed to say, grateful her voice sounded steadier than she felt. "Julian," he extended his hand with a smile that made her knees weak. "Olivia," she shook his hand, electricity shooting up her arm at the contact. "So, Olivia, what brings you here tonight, besides the view?" Something about the way he looked at her, like she was the only person in the room, made her honest. "My friend dragged me here, said I needed to stop wallowing in unemployment and start networking." "Unemployed?" He seemed surprised. "What field?" "Marketing. Recent graduate. Apparently having a degree in enthusiasm isn't enough anymore." She laughed bitterly. "Sorry, that was probably too much information for a stranger." "I like honesty," Julian said, his eyes never leaving hers. "And for what it's worth, any company would be lucky to have someone with your credentials." "You don't know my credentials," Olivia pointed out. "I know you're intelligent. Can tell by the way you speak. You're well educated based on your vocabulary. And you have integrity because you could have lied and said you were here for business, but you told the truth instead." Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks. "That's very observant. I'm good at reading people." They talked for hours. Julian was funny and charming without being arrogant. He asked about her dreams and goals, listened intently when she spoke, and shared stories that made her laugh until her sides hurt. He never mentioned what he did for work, and she never asked, content to just enjoy the conversation. Rebecca appeared. Briefly saw Olivia engaged with Julian, gave an obvious thumbs up, and vanished again. "Your friend approves," Julian noted with amusement. "She's very invested in my social life," Olivia admitted, or lack thereof. "Well, I for one am grateful she dragged you here tonight." The way he looked at her when he said that made Olivia's heart race. There was intention behind those blue eyes, desire barely contained beneath the surface of polite conversation. "Dance with me," he said suddenly, extending his hand. "There's no dance floor," she pointed out. "There is now." He led her to an empty space near the windows and pulled her close. They swayed to the jazz music, bodies pressed together, the rest of the world fading away. Olivia's hands were on his shoulders, his hands on her waist, and the air between them crackled with tension. I want to kiss you, Julian murmured, his lips close to her ear. Then kiss me, she whispered back, surprised by her own boldness. The kiss was everything. Soft at first, then deeper, more urgent. His hands moved to her face, holding her like she was precious, like she might disappear. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing heavily, Olivia knew she was in trouble. Come with me, Julian said. Not a question, but an invitation. She should have said no, should have been practical and cautious like always. But looking into his eyes, feeling the pull between them, she heard herself say yes. The taxi ride to his place was torture in the best way. Stolen kisses at red lights, his hand on her thigh, her fingers in his hair. By the time they reached his building, a stunning high-rise in the most expensive part of the city, Olivia was dizzy with want. His penthouse was enormous and elegantly furnished, but she barely noticed. The moment the door closed, they were on each other. Clothes scattered across the marble floor, hands exploring, lips tasting. Are you sure? Julian asked when they reached his bedroom, his forehead pressed against hers. Olivia had never been more sure of anything. Yes, that night was a revelation. Julian was attentive and passionate, gentle when she needed him to be, and commanding when she wanted him to be. He learned her body like he was studying for the most important test of his life, and when she cried out his name, he looked at her like she had given him the greatest gift. Afterward, wrapped in his arms in the massive bed, Olivia felt something she hadn't felt in months. Happy, content, like maybe everything was going to be okay. Stay, Julian whispered against her hair as her eyes grew heavy. Okay, she murmured, already half asleep. But when Olivia woke as dawn light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, panic set in. What had she done? She didn't even know this man's last name. This wasn't her. She didn't have one-night stands with strangers in penthouses. Moving. Carefully so as not to wake Julian, she gathered her clothes and dressed quickly. On the nightstand, she saw a notepad from some hotel. With trembling hands, she wrote a quick note. Thank you for an unforgettable night. Please don't look for me. She left it on the pillow beside him and slipped out of the penthouse, her heart breaking with every step. In the elevator, tears finally came. She had just experienced something magical and was walking away from it. Because girls like her didn't end up with men like him. That was just reality. The next 2 weeks were misery. Olivia tried to forget. Julian tried to focus on job hunting, tried to convince herself it was just one night and meant nothing. But her body remembered his touch. Her mind replayed his laugh, and her heart ached in a way she didn't understand. Then the email came. Dear Ms. Carter, we are pleased to invite you to interview for the executive assistant position at Sterling Media Group. Your qualifications have impressed our hiring team. Please confirm your availability for an interview this Friday at 2 p.m. Regards, Human Resources, Sterling Media Group. Olivia stared at the email in shock. Sterling Media Group was one of the biggest media conglomerates in the country. She didn't even remember applying there, but she must have in her desperate job-hunting frenzy. This was it. This was her chance. Friday arrived too quickly. Olivia dressed in her best interview outfit, a navy blue skirt suit that was professional but flattering. She practiced her answers on the subway ride downtown, trying to calm her nerves. The Sterling Media Group building was impressive, all gleaming glass and modern architecture. The lobby alone was bigger than her entire apartment. At the reception desk, a polished woman directed her to the executive floor. The CEO himself will be conducting your interview, the receptionist said, with what seemed like sympathy. Mr. Sterling doesn't usually do first interviews, but he personally requested to meet you, Mr. Sterling. The name tickled something in Olivia's memory, but she was too nervous to place it. An assistant named Patricia met her at the elevator and led her down a hallway lined with photos of the company's achievements. At the end of the hall were large double doors made of dark wood. Patricia knocked twice. Mr. Sterling, Ms. Carter is here for her interview. Send her in, came the reply from inside. That voice, Olivia's blood turned to ice. No, it couldn't be. Patricia opened the door and gestured for her to enter. On autopilot, Olivia walked into the office, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might explode. The office was massive with modern furniture and one entire wall of windows overlooking the city. Behind a large mahogany desk sat a man in an expensive suit, his attention on some papers in front of him. Then he looked up. Julian. Their eyes met and time stopped. Recognition flashed across his face, quickly followed by something else. Surprise, satisfaction, and underneath it all, heat. "Miss Carter?" he said slowly, a smile playing at his lips. What a pleasant surprise. Olivia couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The man she had spent one passionate night with, the man she had run away from, was Julian Sterling, billionaire, CEO, her potential boss. "I can explain," she started, her voice shaking. "Can you?" He stood up and walked around the desk, leaning against it casually. "Because I'm very curious to hear why you disappeared without a trace. I didn't know who you were. Would it have mattered?" "Yes, no, I don't know." She was rambling. "This is inappropriate. I should go. Sit down." "Miss Carter," his voice was commanding now, the voice of a man used to being obeyed. "We have an interview to conduct. You can't be serious." "I'm always serious about business." "Sit." With trembling legs, Olivia sat in the chair across from his desk. This was a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. Julian returned to his seat, his expression unreadable. "Your resume is impressive. Top of your class, relevant internship experience, strong references. Tell me, why do you want to work at Sterling Media Group?" Was he really going to pretend nothing happened? Olivia took a shaky breath and tried to focus. "Your company is an industry leader with a reputation for innovation. I believe my skills would be valuable to your team, and the growth opportunities here are unmatched. Now tell me the real reason. That is the real reason." Olivia. The way he said her name sent shivers down her spine. "We're past pretending, don't you think?" Olivia's hands gripped the armrests of her chair as Julian watched her with those impossibly blue eyes. The same eyes that had looked at her with such tenderness 2 weeks ago now held a challenge. "The real reason," she said carefully, "is that I need a job. My rent is overdue, my savings are gone, and this opportunity could change my life. What happened between us was a mistake, Mr. Sterling. One I'd like to forget." Something flickered in his expression. Pain, maybe. But it was gone in an instant. "A mistake," he repeated. "Interesting. It didn't feel like a mistake when you were in my arms." "Mr. Sterling, please." "It's Julian. I think we're past formalities." Olivia stood up. "We're not. If you're going to hold that night over my head, then I don't want this job. I may be desperate, but I have my dignity." For a long moment, they stared at each other. Then Julian's expression softened. "You're right. I apologize. That was unprofessional." He gestured to the chair. "Please, sit. Let me start over." Cautiously, Olivia sat back down. "Your qualifications are excellent, Olivia, truly. I need an executive assistant who is intelligent, organized, and can handle high-pressure situations. Someone who isn't intimidated easily and speaks their mind. From what I've seen, you're all of those things. You barely know me. I know enough. The job is yours if you want it. The salary is competitive. Benefits are comprehensive. And you'll gain experience that will open doors anywhere in the industry." It was everything she needed. Everything she had been praying for. But working for Julian every day, seeing him, remembering that night, could she do that? "What about what happened between us?" she asked quietly. "What about it? We're both adults. We shared one night before we knew we'd be working together. It doesn't have to define our professional relationship unless we let it." He made it sound so simple, so rational. "And if I accept, then you start Monday. Patricia will handle all the paperwork and orientation." He stood and extended his hand across the desk. "Do we have an agreement, Miss Carter?" Olivia looked at his outstretched hand. This was insane, but she needed this job. She could be professional. She could keep her distance. She shook his hand, ignoring the spark that shot through her. We have an agreement, Mr. Sterling. His smile was slow and devastating. Excellent. I look forward to working with you. Monday morning arrived too soon. Olivia dressed conservatively in a gray pantsuit, her hair pulled back in a tight bun, minimal makeup. She wanted to look competent and unapproachable. Patricia showed her to her desk, positioned directly outside Julian's office. Of course, she would see him every time he entered or left. There was no way that was a coincidence. Mr. Sterling likes his coffee black at 9 and 3, Patricia explained. He has a morning meeting with the marketing team at 10, lunch with investors at noon, and conference calls all afternoon. His calendar is on the shared system. He expects you to stay on top of schedule changes and handle any conflicts. Understood, Olivia said, taking notes. One more thing, Patricia lowered her voice. Be careful around Vanessa Monroe, the director of business development. She and Mr. Sterling used to date, and she doesn't like attractive women around him. Olivia's stomach tightened. They dated. For about 6 months last year. She thought it was serious, but he ended things. She still acts like she has claim to him. Before Olivia could respond, Julian's office door opened. He looked impossibly handsome in a charcoal suit, his hair slightly damp like he'd just showered. When he saw Olivia, something flashed in his eyes. It's Carter, good morning. I need the Henderson files for the 10 o'clock meeting. Of course, Mr. Sterling. Olivia's voice was steady, professional. And Olivia? He paused at her desk. Welcome to Sterling Media Group. The first week was a test of endurance. Julian was demanding but fair, expecting excellence, but acknowledging good work. They maintained careful professionalism.
No.
Though Olivia caught him watching her sometimes when he thought she wasn't looking. Vanessa Monroe appeared on Wednesday. She was stunning with platinum blonde hair, designer clothes, and the confidence of someone who knew her worth. She swept past Olivia's desk without acknowledgement and entered Julian's office without knocking. Julian, darling, her voice carried through the partially open door. I heard you hired a new assistant. She looks very young. Olivia's qualified and capable, Julian replied coolly. I'm sure she is. Vanessa's tone dripped with condescension. Just be careful. Young, pretty assistants can be trouble. Remember what happened at Davidson Corp? Vanessa, was there something work-related you needed? There was a pause. We should have dinner. Catch up properly. I'm too busy right now. You're always too busy. But you have to eat, Julian. How about Friday? Olivia tried not to listen, but jealousy burned in her chest. She had no right to feel that way. Julian wasn't hers. I'll check my schedule, Julian said in a tone that clearly meant no. When Vanessa emerged, she stopped at Olivia's desk. So you're the new girl. How sweet. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Word of advice, honey? Don't get any ideas about Julian. He goes through assistants quickly, and office romances never end well. Especially for the assistant. I'm here to work, Ms. Monroe. Nothing more? Of course you are. Vanessa's laugh was cold. They all say that. The days blended together. Olivia proved herself capable, handling crises with calm efficiency, anticipating Julian's needs before he voiced them. He praised her work, always professionally. But there was tension simmering beneath every interaction. Late nights became common. The company was launching a major new platform, and everyone was working overtime. One Thursday evening, Olivia found herself alone in the office with Julian at 9 p.m., reviewing presentation slides. This section needs work, he said, leaning over her shoulder to point at the screen. His proximity made her pulse race. The data is solid, but the visual presentation is cluttered. I can simplify it, she said, too aware of his cologne, the heat of his body. Good. But he didn't move away. For a moment, they both froze, his face inches from hers. Julian, she whispered. I know. His voice was rough. I'm sorry. I just need a minute. He straightened and walked to the window, putting distance between them. This is harder than I thought it would be. What is? Being around you every day. Pretending that night didn't happen? Pretending I don't want to kiss you every time you walk into my office. Olivia's breath caught. We agreed to keep things professional. I know what we agreed. He turned to face her. But knowing what I should do and actually doing it are two different things. You haunt me, Olivia. Every night since you left, I've thought about you. Don't say that. Why not? It's the truth, because it makes this impossible. She stood up. Because I can't afford to lose this job. Because everyone already assumes the worst about me being young and female and working for you. If anything actually happened, it would destroy my credibility. You're right, he said after a moment. I apologize. It won't happen again. But the words hung in the air between them, changing everything. The following week, the company announced a business trip to San Francisco for the platform launch. Julian would attend, along with key staff members. As his assistant, Olivia had to go too. Separate hotel rooms, Julian said when discussing arrangements. Separate flights if you prefer. Same flight is fine, Olivia replied. We're professionals. Vanessa also attended the trip, making her displeasure known. How convenient that Julian's new assistant gets to go to San Francisco, she commented loudly in the office. Must be nice to have special privileges. Olivia ignored her, but the whispers were starting. Colleagues gave her looks. Conversations stopped when she entered rooms. The rumor mill was churning, and Vanessa was feeding it. San Francisco was beautiful. The launch event was a success, and Julian's presentation was brilliant. At the celebration dinner, Olivia sat with the marketing team while Julian entertained investors. She watched him work the room, charming and confident, and felt a pang of longing. He's something, isn't he? One of the marketing managers, Christine, said, I've worked here 5 years and still get impressed by him. He's very good at what he does, Olivia agreed carefully. Vanessa thinks she'll get him back eventually. She's been telling everyone they're rekindling things. Olivia's heart sank. Are they? Who knows? Julian keeps his personal life private, but Vanessa is determined. Back at the hotel, Olivia couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Julian and Vanessa, about the impossibility of her situation. Around midnight, there was a knock on her door. Through the peephole, she saw Julian. She shouldn't open it. Should pretend she was asleep. But her hand moved to the lock of its own accord. What are you doing here? She whispered. I can't stop thinking about you, he said simply. I tried. God knows I tried. But seeing you tonight, watching you smile at other people, knowing you're so close but untouchable, it's driving me insane. Julian, we can't. I know all the reasons why we can't. But I need to know something. Do you feel it too? This pull between us? Olivia wanted to lie. Should lie. But looking into his eyes, she couldn't. Yes, I feel it. Yeah, let me in, please. Just for tonight, let's stop fighting this. It was a terrible idea. Career suicide. Everything she feared. But when he looked at her like that, none of it mattered. She stepped aside. He entered her room. This time was different from their first night. Slower, more intense. They took their time exploring each other, memorizing every touch, every sound. When they finally came together, it felt like coming home. Afterward, lying in the tangled sheets, Julian held her close. I don't want to hide this anymore. We have to, Olivia said against his chest. You know we do. Why? Because people will talk? Let them talk. It's easy for you to say. You're the CEO. Your reputation is secure. But me. I'll be the assistant who slept her way to the top. Everything I've worked for will be dismissed. I won't let that happen. You can't control what people think. He was quiet for a long moment. So what do? We go back to New York and pretend this didn't happen. Again. I don't think I can do that. You have to, she said, though her heart was breaking. We both do. But as the night wore on, and they met, the return to New York was awkward. On the flight, they sat in different rows, maintaining professional distance. But the air between them was charged with everything left unsaid. Back at the office, they tried to resume their careful dance. But something had shifted. The looks lasted longer. The accidental touches felt deliberate, and everyone noticed. Vanessa especially noticed. She started watching Olivia like a hawk, looking for any sign of impropriety. She questioned every decision Julian made regarding Olivia's responsibilities, every project she was assigned. Why is your assistant handling the Morrison account? Vanessa demanded in a meeting. That's usually reserved for senior staff, 'cause she's capable, Julian replied tersely. and she has fresh ideas. Any other questions? The tension in the room was palpable. After the meeting, Christine pulled Olivia aside. Be careful. Vanessa's out for blood. I haven't done anything wrong. Doesn't matter. She's convinced something's going on between you and Julian. And honestly, Liv, the way he looks at you, she might not be wrong. Olivia's stomach churned. There's nothing going on. Maybe not. But the chemistry is obvious to everyone. That night, working late again, Julian called Olivia into his office. The moment she closed the door, he pulled her into his arms. We need to talk about this, he said. There's nothing to talk about, Olivia. I'm falling in love with you. The words hit her like a physical blow. Don't. Too late. I've been falling since that first night. Maybe before that, from the moment you told the truth about why you were at that lounge. Tears filled her eyes. This can't work, Julian. You know it can't? Why not? Because of what people will say? Because of Vanessa's jealousy? Those aren't good enough reasons. They're the only reasons that matter. I worked too hard to get here. I won't have my accomplishments diminished because people think I slept my way to success. Then I'll make you a senior executive. Give you real responsibilities that no one can question. That would only make it worse. Can't you see that? Any promotion, any recognition will be attributed to our relationship. I'll never be taken seriously. Julian's jaw clenched. So what? We just ignore this? Pretend we don't care about each other? Yes, she said, though the word tasted like ash. That's exactly what we do, but ignoring it became impossible. Stolen moments in empty conference rooms, kisses in the parking garage, text messages that were far from professional. They were playing with fire, and Vanessa was watching. 2 weeks before the annual company gala, Vanessa made her move. She cornered Olivia in the ladies' room, her expression triumphant. I know about you and Julian, she said. Olivia's blood ran cold. I don't know what you're talking about, please. I followed you to the parking garage last week. I have photos. She pulled out her phone, showing images of Julian kissing Olivia by his car. Quality could be better, but they're clear enough. What do you want? I want you gone. Quit, and I'll delete these. Stay, and I'll make sure everyone sees them at the gala. Your choice. Olivia felt sick. You're blackmailing me? I'm protecting Julian from a gold digger. He doesn't see what you really are, but I do. You're using him for his money and connections. That's not true. Doesn't matter what's true. Matters what people believe. And when they see these photos, when I tell them how you seduced the boss, how you manipulated your way into this job, they'll believe me. Because that's what people expect from girls like you. Girls like me? Young, pretty, ambitious. You're a cliché, honey. And clichés are easy to destroy. Vanessa left, and Olivia collapsed against the sink, shaking. She had to tell Julian. But what could he do? Fire Vanessa? That would only confirm the rumors. Take out a public statement? That would make things worse. For the next 2 weeks, Olivia lived in dread. She considered quitting, but couldn't bring herself to do it. She had done nothing wrong. Why should she run? The night of the gala arrived. Olivia wore a midnight blue gown that made her feel beautiful and terrified all at once. She arrived early to help with last-minute arrangements, avoiding Julian as much as possible. The ballroom was elegant, with crystal chandeliers and hundreds of guests in formal attire. Julian gave his annual speech, commanding and charismatic. Olivia watched from the back, her heart aching. At 10 p.m., Vanessa made her move. She clinked her glass for attention, the sound cutting through conversations. Excuse me, everyone. Her voice rang out. I have an announcement. Julian's eyes found Olivia's across the room. He looked confused. I think you all deserve to know the truth about our esteemed CEO and his new assistant. Vanessa's smile was vicious. You see, Ms. Carter here didn't get her job through traditional means. She seduced Julian Sterling before she ever applied, and he rewarded her with a position she isn't qualified for. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Olivia felt hundreds of eyes turn to her. That's not true, she said, but her voice was too quiet, isn't it? Then explain these. Vanessa projected the parking garage photos on the large screens around the room. Julian and Olivia, clearly kissing. The room erupted in whispers. Olivia's vision blurred with tears. "Vanessa, that's enough." Julian's voice cut through the chaos, cold and furious. "The truth hurts, doesn't it, Julian? She played you, got you into bed, then conveniently showed up for an interview. How calculated. You have no idea what you're talking about, don't I? Everyone here is thinking the same thing. She's a gold digger who used her body to get ahead. It's pathetic, really." Olivia couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This was her worst nightmare playing out in front of everyone. Without another word, she pushed through the crowd and ran. She heard Julian calling her name but didn't stop. In the lobby, she kicked off her heels and kept running, tears streaming down her face. At home, she locked herself in her apartment and sobbed. Her phone exploded with messages from Julian, from Christine, from Rebecca, who had heard about the disaster through social media. Through her tears, she typed out an email. "Dear Mr. Sterling, I resign effective immediately. I'm sorry for any embarrassment I've caused you and the company. Sincerely, Olivia Carter." She hit send and turned off her phone. The next few days were a blur. Olivia ignored all calls and messages. She ate nothing, slept fitfully, and tried to figure out how to rebuild a life that felt shattered. Rebecca finally showed up with a key. Olivia had given her years ago. "All right, that's enough wallowing. Get in the shower, Rebecca." "I can't." "Can't. You can and you will. That viper Vanessa doesn't get to win. You did nothing wrong. Liv, you fell for a guy. That's not a crime. I slept with my boss. You slept with a man before he was your boss. Big difference. Now shower, because we're going out." "I'm not going anywhere." "Fine, then I'm staying here until you rot. Your choice." Reluctantly, Olivia showered and dressed. Rebecca forced food down her throat and wouldn't let her retreat back into depression. "You're Olivia Carter," Rebecca said firmly. "The girl who graduated top of her class, who survived her dad walking out, who put herself through college. You're a fighter, and you don't give up because one mean woman told lies. Everyone believes her, so prove them wrong. Find another job. Show them your skills weren't about Julian Sterling." Took another week, but Olivia finally updated her resume. She applied to smaller companies, places where the Sterling scandal wouldn't matter as much. A marketing firm called Horizon Creative responded within days. The interview went well. The hiring manager, a kind woman named Stephanie, was impressed by her skills. "I'll be honest," Stephanie said. "I heard about what happened at Sterling Media, but I also did my research. Your academic record is impeccable. Your references from before Sterling are glowing, and your work samples are excellent. I believe you earned your position there regardless of any personal relationship. The job is yours if you want it." The salary was half what Sterling paid, but Olivia didn't care. It was a fresh start. "I want it, thank you." She started the following Monday. Horizon Creative was smaller, less prestigious, but the people were genuinely nice. No office politics, no backstabbing, just good work and mutual respect. Olivia threw herself into her new role, determined to prove she was more than scandal. She worked hard, pitched innovative ideas, and slowly began to feel like herself again. But she missed Julian with an ache that wouldn't fade. Every night she wondered what he was doing, if he thought about her. If he hated her for running. 2 weeks into her new job, Rebecca texted her, "Turn on Channel 7 News, now." Confused, Olivia turned on the small TV in the break room. There on the screen was Julian, standing outside Sterling Media Group with reporters surrounding him. "Mr. Sterling, is it true you fired Vanessa Monroe?" "Yes, Ms. Monroe engaged in workplace harassment and defamation. Legal action is being taken." "What about the allegations regarding you and Olivia Carter?" Julian looked directly into the camera. Ms. Carter was and is an exceptional professional who earned her position through merit. Any insinuation otherwise is false and slanderous. The personal relationship that developed between us happened after her hire and was mutual and consensual. She is one of the most talented individuals I've ever worked with, and I deeply regret that my company's toxic environment drove her away. Olivia's hands shook. "Are you currently in a relationship with Miss Carter?" "That's between me and Olivia. But I will say this. She is remarkable, intelligent, principled. and deserves to be judged on her abilities, not on who she cares about. I hope she's watching this, because I need her to know that I'm sorry. Sorry I couldn't protect her better. Sorry I put her in that position. And sorry I let her leave thinking any of this was her fault. Tears streamed down Olivia's face. Mr. Sterling, some are saying this is just damage control. Let them say what they want. I know the truth. Olivia knows the truth. It's all that matters. He turned and walked back into the building, ignoring the shouted questions. Olivia's phone rang. Julian, she stared at it, hand trembling, and answered. Did you see? His voice was rough. I saw. I meant every word. You're brilliant, Olivia. You always were. Anyone who can't see that is blind. Julian, I don't know what to say. Say you'll see me. Let me apologize properly. Let me tell you everything I should have said before. I'm at work, then after work. I'll wait all night if I have to. Please, Olivia. They met at a quiet coffee shop far from both their offices. Julian looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes and rumpled clothes. He stood when she entered, and for a moment they just stared at each other. You look good, he said finally. You look terrible, she replied honestly. He laughed, a broken sound. Haven't been sleeping well. Turns out the woman I love walked out of my life and I can't function properly. Julian, let me finish. I handled everything wrong. I should have gone public with our relationship from the start. Should have protected you better. Should have fired Vanessa the first time she was inappropriate. I thought I could manage it all, but I failed. I failed you. It wasn't just your responsibility. It was, though. I'm the one with power in that situation. Should have used it better. He reached across the table, taking her hand. I love you, Olivia. Not because you're convenient, or because we have chemistry, though God knows we have that. I love you because you're courageous and honest, and you make me want to be a better man. And I know I have no right to ask, but I'm asking anyway. Give me another chance. Olivia looked at their joined hands. People will still talk. Let them. My new boss might not like me dating the CEO of Sterling Media, then quit and come work somewhere else. Or don't work at all. Or start your own company and I'll be your first investor. I don't care, Olivia. I just want you in my life. You'd really give up your reputation for me? In a heartbeat? Because reputation doesn't keep me warm at night. Success doesn't make me laugh. Money doesn't make me feel alive the way you do. His grip tightened on her hand. I love you. And I'm not giving up on us unless you tell me there's absolutely no hope. Olivia thought about the past months, the fear, the pain, the scandal. But she also thought about the laughter, the passion, the way Julian looked at her like she was his whole world. There's hope, she whispered. The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise. Yeah, but we're doing this differently. No secrets, no hiding. If we're together for real. Absolutely. I'll shout it from the rooftops if you want. Maybe not that dramatic, she laughed, but honest. Open. No matter what people say. Deal. He stood and pulled her up into his arms. Can I kiss you now? I've been dying to kiss you for weeks. You better. Relief and joy and promise all wrapped up in one perfect moment. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. So what now? Olivia asked. Now I take you to dinner. Then maybe a walk. And I spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt how much I love you. That's a pretty ambitious plan. I'm an ambitious guy. You should know that by now. They left the coffee shop hand in hand, facing whatever would come together. 6 months later, Olivia sat in her new office at Sterling Media Group, not as Julian's assistant, but as Director of Marketing Innovation, a position she had earned through a competitive application process overseen by an independent hiring committee. The whispers had eventually died down. Her work spoke for itself. She launched 3 successful campaigns that brought major clients to Sterling. Industry publications featured her insights. Slowly, people stopped seeing her as Julian Sterling's girlfriend and started seeing her as Olivia Carter, marketing genius. Julian knocked on her doorframe. Ready for lunch? Always, she smiled, grabbing her purse. They walked through the office together, no longer hiding. Some people still gossiped, but most had moved on to other scandals. In the elevator, Julian pulled her close. Happy? Very, Olivia said, meaning it completely. You, never been happier. He kissed her forehead. Thank you for taking a chance on me. Thank you for not giving up on us. The elevator doors opened to the lobby, and they walked out into the sunshine, two people who had fought for their love and won. Because sometimes the best things in life are worth fighting for. And sometimes, just sometimes, the fairy tale ending is real. Alina Carter stared at the coffee stains spreading across the marble floor of the executive suite. Her heart sinking as she realized it had splattered onto the hem of her boss's custom Italian suit pants. Adrian Blackwell stood frozen, his phone pressed to his ear, looking down at the damage with an expression Alina could not quite read. I'll call you back, Adrian said into the phone, his voice oddly calm. He ended the call and looked at Alina, who was already grabbing napkins from his desk. Mr. Blackwell, I am so sorry, Alina stammered, dropping to her knees to blot the coffee. I tripped over the carpet edge. I'll pay for the dry cleaning, or replacement, or whatever you need. Alina, stop, Adrian said, and something in his tone made her look up. He was not angry. Instead, he looked tired, almost defeated, which was unusual for the man Forbes had just named one of the most innovative tech entrepreneurs under 40. It's just a suit. I have 17 others exactly like it. Lena stood, still clutching the coffee-soaked napkins. In 3 years of working as Adrian's executive assistant, she had learned to read his moods better than anyone else at Blackwell Technologies. Right now, beneath the expensive suit and commanding presence, her boss looked like a man carrying the weight of something far heavier than quarterly earnings reports. Is everything okay? She asked, forgetting for a moment the professional boundary she usually maintained. Adrian walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Seattle, his hands shoved into his pockets. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across his office, highlighting the tension in his shoulders. My father is turning 60 next Saturday, he said finally. There's a gala at the estate. 500 guests, press coverage, the whole theatrical production my family excels at creating. Alina had heard about Harrison Blackwell's legendary parties. The man had built a real estate empire worth billions, and he believed in showing it off at every opportunity. That sounds like quite an event, Alina offered, unsure where this conversation was heading. Except my father has decided this is the perfect opportunity to officially announce my engagement to Vanessa Sterling. Alina felt her stomach drop, though she could not explain why. She knew Vanessa Sterling by reputation. The woman was a socialite, philanthropist, and heiress to the Sterling Hotel fortune. She was also stunningly beautiful, impeccably connected, and had been photographed with Adrian at various charity events over the past year. I didn't realize you were engaged, Alina said carefully. Congratulations. Adrian turned to face her, and there was something almost desperate in his expression. I'm not engaged. Vanessa and I went on 3 dates, all arranged by our parents. And I made it clear I wasn't interested in pursuing anything serious. But she's convinced our families should merge their empires, and my father agrees. He's been pressuring me for months. Can't you just tell them no? I have. Repeatedly. But my father is a man who sees what he wants to see. And Vanessa is a woman who doesn't accept rejection easily. If I show up alone to this gala, they'll parade her around as my date. And every newspaper in the city will run engagement speculation stories by morning. Lena shifted uncomfortably, still not understanding why Adrian was confiding all this to her. So what are you going to do? Adrian took a deep breath, and Alina recognized the look on his face. It was the same expression he wore before presenting a risky business proposal to the board. I need you to be my girlfriend for the evening, he said. Alina blinked. I'm sorry, what? Fake girlfriend, to be precise. Just for one night. If I show up with someone I'm clearly involved with, it sends a message to both Vanessa and my father that I'm not available. Mr. Blackwell, I don't think that's appropriate. I work for you. Which is exactly why you're perfect for this, Adrian said, moving closer. You know me better than anyone else in my life. You can anticipate what I'm going to say before I say it. We already have natural chemistry in a professional sense. It wouldn't take much to make it appear romantic. Elena's mind was racing. This was insane, inappropriate, completely outside the bounds of their working relationship. And yet, a small part of her, the part she usually kept locked away during business hours, was intrigued. "Why me?" she asked. You could call any of dozens of women who would jump at the chance to be seen as Adrian Blackwell's girlfriend, even for a night. "Because I trust you," Adrian said simply. "Because you're honest and smart, and you won't get the wrong idea about what this is. And because I'm willing to pay you $10,000 for approximately 6 hours of your time." Alina's breath caught. $10,000. That was almost 3 months of her salary, and more importantly, it was exactly what she still needed for her sister's medical expenses. Jenna had been diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disorder 6 months ago, and even with insurance, the experimental treatment she needed was devastatingly expensive. $10,000 to pretend to be your girlfriend for one evening, Alina repeated slowly. Plus a shopping budget for whatever you need to wear to the event. Call it 2004 clothes, shoes, hair, makeup, whatever makes you feel confident. Alina bit her lip, her practical side warring with her sense of professional ethics. "This is crazy, completely insane," Adrian agreed. "But will you do it?" She thought about Jenna, about the mounting medical bills, about the scared look in her little sister's eyes during their last hospital visit. She thought about how Adrian had been a good boss, demanding but fair, and how he was looking at her now with something close to desperation. "I have conditions," Alina said finally. Relief flooded Adrian's face. "Name them." "First, this is strictly professional. One night, nothing more, nothing less. Afterward, we never mention it again, and our working relationship remains exactly as it is." "Agreed." "Second, you brief me completely on your family, friends, and anyone else who will be at this gala. I need to know enough to be convincing. I'll give you a full dossier." "Third, we practice." "If we're going to make this believable, we need to look comfortable together. That means rehearsing how we interact, what our story is, all of it." Adrian smiled, and Alina realized it was the first genuine smile she had seen from him in weeks. "So you're saying yes?" Alina took a deep breath, knowing she was crossing a line she could never uncross. "Yes, I'll be your fake girlfriend, but only for that one night." "Thank you, Alina," Adrian said. And the gratitude in his voice was so sincere that Alina felt a flutter of something she definitely should not be feeling for her boss. "I promise I'll make this as painless as possible." As Alina left his office to clean up the coffee disaster, she wondered if she had just made the best decision of her life, or the worst. What she did not know was that by agreeing to one night of pretending, she had set in motion a chain of events that would change everything she thought she knew about Adrian Blackwell, about herself, and about the fine line between performance and reality. The following morning, Alina arrived at the office to find an envelope on her desk. Inside was a black credit card with her name embossed on it and a note in Adrian's distinctive handwriting for shopping. "Don't hold back. You need to look like someone I would actually date." Alina smiled despite herself, tucking the card into her wallet. She had agreed to play a part, and she was going to play it perfectly. What she had not anticipated was how quickly the lines between acting and authenticity would begin to blur, or how one night of pretending could reveal truths that both she and Adrian had been hiding from themselves for far longer than either wanted to admit. The week leading up to the gala passed in a blur of preparation that felt both surreal and strangely intimate. Adrian had been true to his word, providing Alina with detailed information about every important person who would be attending his father's birthday celebration. They spent their lunch breaks reviewing names, relationships, and the intricate web of business connections that defined the Blackwell social circle. But it was the evenings that changed everything. On Tuesday, Adrian had insisted they practice at his penthouse apartment rather than the office, claiming they needed a more relaxed environment to seem natural together. Alina had entered the sleek, modern space with her notepad and professional demeanor firmly in place, only to find Adrian waiting with takeout containers and a nervousness she had never seen in him before. "Lesson 1, he had said, gesturing to the couch. "We need to be comfortable in each other's personal space." They had spent 2 hours simply sitting close, talking about things that had nothing to do with Blackwell Technologies. Alina learned that Adrian played piano, but only when he thought no one could hear him. That he had wanted to be an architect before his father pushed him into the family business. That he donated anonymously to 3 different children's hospitals because his younger brother had died of leukemia when Adrian was 12. By Thursday, they were holding hands without thinking about it, and Adrian could rest his arm around Elena's shoulders in a way that looked completely natural. On Friday evening, they practiced dancing in his living room, moving together to soft music while rain drummed against the windows. When the song ended, they had stood there, swaying slightly. Adrian's hand warm on the small of Elena's back, both of them pretending not to notice how perfectly they fit together. "You're a good dancer," Elena had whispered, suddenly aware of how close his face was to hers. "You're easy to lead," Adrian had replied, his voice rough. For a moment, Elena thought he might kiss her. Really kiss her, but then he had stepped back and suggested they call it a night. Now, standing in her bedroom on Saturday evening, Elena barely recognized her reflection. The dress she had chosen was midnight blue silk that hugged her curves before flowing into an elegant skirt. Her dark hair was swept up in a sophisticated style. The makeup artist Adrian had sent over had transformed her features into something glamorous yet natural. She looked like someone who belonged in Adrian Blackwell's world. The doorbell rang at exactly 7 o'clock. Adrian stood in her doorway wearing a tailored black tuxedo. The expression on his face when he saw her made Elena's heart skip several beats. "Elena," he breathed. "You look stunning. Clean up pretty well yourself," she managed. Trying to ignore the warmth spreading through her chest, the drive to the Blackwell estate took 40 minutes. Winding through increasingly expensive neighborhoods until they passed through massive iron gates into what could only be described as a private kingdom. The house itself was a sprawling mansion lit by thousands of lights, with valets, parking cars, and guests in evening wear streaming through the entrance. "Ready?" Adrian asked, taking her hand as the valet opened her door. Elena squeezed his fingers. "As I'll ever be." The moment they entered the grand ballroom, Elena understood why Adrian had been so anxious. The space was filled with the kind of wealth and power that most people only saw in movies. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, a full orchestra played on a raised platform, and waiters circulated with champagne and caviar. Every person in attendance looked like they belonged on the cover of a magazine. "Ah, Adrian!" A woman's voice cut through the crowd. Elena turned to see an elegant woman in her late 50s approaching. Her silver hair perfectly styled, her smile warm, but her eyes sharp and assessing. "There you are. We've been waiting," Mother Adrian said, and Elena heard genuine affection in his voice. "This is Elena Carter." "Elena, my mother, Grace Blackwell?" Grace extended her hand and Elena shook it, feeling the weight of the older woman's scrutiny. "Elena, Adrian has mentioned you numerous times over the years. It's lovely to finally meet you properly." "The pleasure's mine." "Mrs. Blackwell," Elena said, grateful that her voice came out steady.
"Please."
"Call me Grace. Any woman who can keep my son organized and relatively sane deserves to be on a first-name basis." Grace's smile widened. "Though I must admit, I'm surprised. Adrian has always been so careful about keeping his personal and professional lives separate. Sometimes the best relationships develop from friendship and mutual respect," Adrian said smoothly, his hand moving to the small of Elena's back in a gesture that looked completely natural after their week of practice. Before Grace could respond, a booming voice interrupted. "There's my son." Harrison Blackwell was an imposing man, tall and broad-shouldered despite his age, with silver hair and the kind of commanding presence that made everyone in his vicinity instinctively pay attention. He approached with a beautiful blonde woman on his arm, and Elena's stomach tightened when she recognized Vanessa Sterling from the Society page photographs. "Adrian," Harrison said, embracing his son briefly before turning his attention to Elena. "And who is this?" "Father, this is Elena Carter, my girlfriend." "Elena, my father, Harrison Blackwell." Harrison's eyebrows rose slightly. "Your girlfriend? Well, this is unexpected." He shook Elena's hand, his grip firm and evaluating. "What do you do, Elena?" "I work in executive management," Elena replied, using the description Adrian had suggested. It was technically true, even if it glossed over the fact that she was Adrian's assistant. "How did you two meet?" Vanessa interjected, her voice honey-sweet, but her eyes cold. She was even more beautiful in person, with perfect features and a designer dress that probably cost more than Elena's car. At work, Adrian said easily, Elena has been with Blackwell Technologies for 3 years. We became friends first, and over the past several months we realized it was something more. How convenient, Vanessa said, her smile never wavering. And romantic, I suppose, though mixing business with pleasure can be so complicated. Not when you find the right person, Elena said, surprising herself with her boldness. She looked up at Adrian, and the smile he gave her in return made her forget for a moment that they were acting. The evening continued in a whirlwind of introductions. Elena met Adrian's younger sister Charlotte, a whip-smart college student who whispered, "Thank God you're not Vanessa," before hugging Elena enthusiastically. She shook hands with business partners, smiled through conversations about yachts and summer homes in the Hamptons, and gradually began to relax into her role. Adrian was attentive without being overbearing, bringing her champagne, introducing her with pride in his voice, keeping his hand on her back or their fingers intertwined in a way that felt increasingly natural. Several times Elena caught herself forgetting that this was all pretend, that come Monday morning they would return to being boss and assistant, that the way Adrian looked at her when he thought she was not paying attention was just part of the performance. As the orchestra began playing a waltz, Adrian led her onto the dance floor. They moved together easily, the result of their practice sessions, and Elena found herself resting her head against his shoulder, breathing in his cologne, feeling the solid warmth of him against her. "You're incredible," Adrian murmured into her hair. "Everyone believes it completely. Even my father seems impressed." "That's good," Elena whispered back, trying to ignore the disappointment that fluttered through her. Of course, he was pleased that their act was convincing. That was the entire point, Adrian said, pulling back slightly to look at her face. "I need to tell you something." But before he could continue, Vanessa appeared beside them, her smile sharp. "May I cut in? I'd love to have a dance with Adrian for old time's sake." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Actually, Vanessa, I'd prefer to stay with Elena." "Just one dance," Vanessa insisted, already positioning herself between them. "Surely your girlfriend won't mind sharing you for a few minutes." Elena, not wanting to cause a scene, stepped back. "Of course not. I'll get some air." She slipped away before Adrian could protest, needing a moment to collect herself. The performance was wearing on her, making her wish for things that were never part of their agreement. She found a side door that led to an expansive garden. Lit by lanterns and blessedly quiet compared to the ballroom, Elena walked along a stone path, her heels clicking softly until she reached a fountain surrounded by rose bushes. She sat on the marble edge, looking up at the stars and trying to remember why she had agreed to this charade in the first place. The money, yes, but somewhere over the past week, it had stopped being about the money and started being about the dangerous hope that maybe Adrian saw her as more than just his efficient assistant.
So you're the poor girl who thinks?
She can land Adrian Blackwell. Lena spun to find Vanessa standing behind her, the sweetness completely gone from her voice. In the dim light of the garden, the socialite looked predatory. "Excuse me," Elena said, standing up. "Please, did you really think I wouldn't do my research?" Vanessa pulled out her phone, scrolling through something before turning the screen to face Elena. Elena Carter. Age 27. College dropout. Currently earning $48,000 a year as an executive assistant. Your sister has been in and out of hospitals for 6 months, with medical bills totaling over $100,000. Your mother died when you were 16. Your father works construction in Portland, and you've been living paycheck to paycheck your entire adult life. Lena felt the blood drain from her face. "How did you money can buy a lot of information, sweetie? And what it tells me is that you're a gold digger who saw an opportunity and jumped at it. How much is he paying you to pretend to be his girlfriend? Or are you holding out for something more permanent?" "You don't know anything about me or my relationship with Adrian," Elena said, her voice shaking with anger and humiliation. "I know that you don't belong in this world. I know that Harrison Blackwell would never accept someone like you as a daughter-in-law. And I know that whatever little arrangement you have with Adrian will end the moment I walk back into that ballroom and share what I've learned with his father." Vanessa stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. Adrian Blackwell is going to marry me. Our families have been planning it for years. You're just a temporary distraction, a charity case he'll forget about the moment someone better comes along. So do yourself a favor and walk away now before you get hurt. Trust me, girls, like you always get hurt when they try to play in our world. Alina felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Without another word, she turned and walked quickly back toward the mansion, her only thought to find her coat and call a cab. She could not do this anymore, could not pretend that she was someone she was not, could not keep acting like she belonged in a world where people like Vanessa Sterling could destroy her with a few phone calls. She was halfway across the ballroom when she heard Adrian's voice. Lena, wait. But she did not stop, could not stop, even as she felt everyone's eyes on her, even as she heard the whispers starting to spread through the crowd. She just needed to get out, to breathe, to stop pretending that Cinderella stories happened to girls like her. She had almost reached the entrance when Adrian caught her arm, spinning her around to face him. Alina, what happened? What did Vanessa say to you? Let me go, Adrian, Alina said, her voice breaking. This was a mistake. All of it. Tell me what she said. The truth, Alina whispered. She said the truth. That I don't belong here. That your father would never accept me. That I'm just a charity case you'll forget about. And she's right. So thank you for the money, but I can't do this anymore. Adrian's expression hardened into something Alina had never seen before. Stay here, he said. Please, just give me 2 minutes. Before Alina could respond, Adrian turned and strode back into the ballroom. Alina watched, frozen, as he climbed onto the small stage where the orchestra had been playing. Taking the microphone from the surprised conductor, "Excuse me, everyone," Adrian's voice boomed through the speakers, silencing the crowd. "I need to say something." Harrison Blackwell stepped forward, looking alarmed. "Son, this isn't the time, actually. Father, it's the perfect time. I've been letting you and everyone else in this room control my life for too long, and it ends tonight." The entire ballroom had gone silent, hundreds of eyes fixed on Adrian. Alina stood paralyzed in the doorway, unable to move, unable to process what was happening. "I brought Alina here tonight because I wanted to introduce you all to the woman I'm in love with," Adrian continued, his eyes finding Alina across the crowd. "Not someone I'm fake dating, not someone I'm pretending to care about to avoid an arrangement I never wanted. The woman I'm actually genuinely in love with." Lena's heart stopped beating. Lena Carter is the smartest, kindest, most genuine person I've ever known. She works as my executive assistant, yes, and I don't care who knows it or who thinks that's inappropriate. For 3 years, she's been the first person I want to talk to in the morning and the last person I think about at night. She makes me laugh. She challenges me. She sees through all the corporate nonsense to who I really am. And somewhere along the way, I fell completely in love with her. Tears were streaming down Elena's face now, and she could not tell if they were from shock, joy, or terror. "So too Vanessa Sterling," Adrian said, looking directly at the blonde woman who stood frozen in the crowd. "Thank you for showing your true colors tonight. And to my father, I love you, but if you can't accept Alina, then you can't accept me, because I'm not walking away from her. Not now, not ever." Adrian set down the microphone and walked through the silent crowd toward Alina. When he reached her, he cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I should have told you sooner. This stopped being fake for me days ago. Maybe it was never really fake at all." Alina breathed, her hands coming up to grip his jacket. "This is crazy, I know, but it's also true. So please, Alina Carter, will you stop being my fake girlfriend and consider being my real one?" Alina laughed through her tears, and then she kissed him, really kissed him, in front of his entire world. The ballroom erupted in applause, though whether it was approval or shock, Alina no longer cared. All that mattered was Adrian, solid and real, and choosing her. When they finally broke apart, Harrison Blackwell was standing beside them, his expression unreadable. "Well," he said finally, "that was quite a speech, son." "I meant every word," Adrian said firmly. Harrison studied them both for a long moment, then surprised everyone by smiling. Good. Grace has been telling me for years that I push you too hard, try to control too much. And that young lady, he nodded at Alina, stood up to me earlier tonight in a way most people are too afraid to try. I respect that. He extended his hand to Alina. Welcome to the family. Ms. Carter, I suspect you're exactly what my son needs. Alina shook his hand. Still dazed, Grace appeared and hugged her warmly. Thank God, Adrian's mother whispered in her ear. I was so worried he'd end up with that horrible Sterling girl. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations, curious questions, and sideways glances. But Alina did not care about any of it because Adrian never left her side. Holding her hand like he was afraid she might disappear if he let go, as the party wound down and they finally escaped to Adrian's car, Alina turned to him in the darkness. Was any of that planned? She asked. The part where I fell in love with you. No. The part where I realized I couldn't keep pretending it was just business. That happened somewhere around our third practice session when you fell asleep on my couch and I spent an hour just watching you breathe. Alina smiled. You're not the boss I thought you were. And you're so much more than an assistant. You always have been. They drove back to the city in comfortable silence, hands intertwined. Both of them knowing that nothing would ever be the same again. The fake date had become real. The performance had revealed the truth. And somewhere between a coffee-stained suit and a ballroom confession, they had stumbled into something that felt an awful lot like fate. The morning after the gala, Alina woke up in her own apartment with the strange sensation that the previous night had been an elaborate dream. But when she checked her phone, she found 47 text messages, including 3 from Adrian, 5 from her best friend who had seen clips of Adrian's speech already circulating on social media, and 1 from her sister Jenna that simply read, "Call me right now." Alina was still staring at her phone when her doorbell rang. She opened it to find Adrian standing there with coffee and pastries, still wearing his tuxedo pants and a wrinkled dress shirt, looking like he had not slept at all. "Hi," he said, suddenly looking uncertain in a way that made Alina's heart ache. "Can I come in?" Alina stepped aside and Adrian entered her small apartment, setting the coffee and pastries on her kitchen counter. They stood there for a moment in awkward silence. The easy intimacy of the previous night replaced by the weight of everything that had been said in front of 500 witnesses. Adrian Alina began, but he interrupted her. "Before you say anything, I need you to know that everything I said last night was true. I didn't plan it, and I probably should have told you privately first. But when I saw you leaving, when I realized Vanessa had hurt you, I just couldn't let you think that any of this was fake anymore." "How long?" Alina asked quietly. "How long have you known?" Adrian ran his hand through his hair, a gesture Alina had learned meant he was struggling with something difficult. "Honestly, I think part of me has known for a long time, maybe even years. But I convinced myself it was inappropriate, that I was your boss, and crossing that line would be wrong. It wasn't until I asked you to fake date me that I had to face the truth." He moved closer, his eyes searching hers. "That first practice session, when we were just sitting on my couch talking, I realized I had been lying to myself. I don't just respect you as an employee, Alina. I'm in love with you. With your laugh, your intelligence, the way you call me out when I'm being ridiculous, the way you make everything in my life better just by being in it." Alina felt tears threatening again. "I thought I was going crazy. All week, every time we practiced, every time you touched me or looked at me a certain way, I kept telling myself it was just acting, that you were a good performer and I was reading too much into it." "It was never acting for me," Adrian said softly. "Every touch, every look, every moment was real. I was just too afraid to admit it." "What happens now?" Alina whispered. "You're still my boss. Your father may have been gracious last night, but the board, the company, there are rules about relationships between supervisors and employees." Adrian smiled. "About that. I spent most of the night on the phone with our legal team and HR department. As of Monday morning, you're being promoted to Director of Strategic Operations, reporting directly to the coup instead of me. Same floor, different chain of command, substantial raise, and absolutely no ethical violations." Lena's eyes widened. You can't just create a position for me because we're dating.
Dad.
That position has been vacant for 6 months because we couldn't find anyone qualified enough. You've been doing half those duties already without the title or compensation. I should have promoted you a year ago, but I was too selfish to risk losing you as my assistant. He took her hands in his. This isn't charity, Elena. You've earned this 10 times over. Adrian, I don't know what to say. I say you'll give us a real chance. No fake dating, no pretending, just us figuring this out together. Elena looked up at the man who had somehow become her best friend without her realizing it. The man who had defended her in front of his entire world. The man who was looking at her like she was the most precious thing he had ever seen. Yes, she said simply. Yes to all of it. Adrian pulled her into his arms, and they stood there in her tiny kitchen, holding each other as morning light streamed through the windows. When they finally pulled apart, Adrian's expression turned serious. There's something else I need to tell you, and I need you to not be angry. Elena's stomach dropped. What? Your sister's surgery? The experimental treatment she needed. What about it? Adrian took a deep breath. I paid for it. 3 weeks ago, the hospital called it an anonymous donation, but it was me. Elena stepped back, her mind reeling. You what? I overheard you on the phone with the hospital, talking about payment plans and trying to figure out how to cover the costs. I couldn't stand the thought of you worrying about money when I had more than enough to help. So I made some calls and took care of it. Adrian, that treatment cost over $60,000. I know. You paid $60,000 for my sister's medical treatment without telling me. Yes. He met her eyes steadily. And I'd do it again. Elena, that money means nothing to me compared to your peace of mind. I know you're proud and independent, and I know you might see this as charity, but it wasn't. It was me taking care of someone I love by helping the person she loves most in the world. Elena didn't know whether to laugh or cry or scream. You're impossible. I know. Is that a deal breaker? She thought about Jenna, about the relief she had felt when the hospital called to say an anonymous donor had covered the costs, about the nights she had been able to sleep without that crushing weight of worry. She thought about the man standing in front of her who had given her sister a chance at health without asking for anything in return. It's not a deal breaker, but from now on, we make decisions together. No more grand gestures without discussion. Heck, live with that, Adrian said, relief flooding his face. As long as you can live with the fact that I'm going to want to spoil you sometimes. Sometimes, Elena agreed. But I'm still paying my own rent and buying my own coffee, even though I'm apparently terrible at making coffee, and yours is much better. Elena laughed. Yes, even though. They spent the rest of the morning talking, really talking, about expectations and boundaries and what dating would look like now that they weren't pretending. Adrian confessed that he had been planning to tell her how he felt for weeks, but kept losing his nerve. Elena admitted that she had been half in love with him since the company Christmas party, too. Years ago, when he had noticed she was sitting alone and spent an hour talking to her about her favorite books instead of networking with potential clients. By afternoon, they had moved to her couch. Elena curled against Adrian's side while they ignored the constant buzzing of their phones. The world wanted to know about Adrian Blackwell's dramatic declaration, but for now, the world could wait. I should probably call my sister, Elena said eventually. She sent me about 20 increasingly frantic messages. And I should call my mother before she shows up here to make sure I haven't messed this up, Adrian added. But neither of them moved, content to stay exactly where they were. Over the following weeks, Elena and Adrian navigated their new reality with a mixture of joy and adjustment. True to his word, Adrian had her promoted, and Elena threw herself into her new role with enthusiasm. Working on a different floor meant they saw each other less during the day, which made their evenings together even more precious. The media attention was intense for a while. Several outlets ran stories about the Cinderella romance between the billionaire CEO and his former assistant. Vanessa Sterling gave an interview calling their relationship inappropriate and Adrian emotionally unstable. But the comments section was flooded with people defending their love story and criticizing Vanessa's obvious jealousy. Harrison Blackwell, surprisingly, became one of their biggest supporters. He invited them to Sunday dinners at the estate and seemed genuinely charmed by Elena's directness and intelligence. Grace simply hugged Alina every time she saw her and told Adrian repeatedly how proud she was that he had finally found someone real. Jenna recovered beautifully from her treatment. And when she was finally healthy enough, Adrian flew both her and Elena's father out to Seattle to meet properly. Watching Adrian nervously try to impress her construction worker father while Jenna teased them both mercilessly was one of Elena's favorite memories. 6 months after the gala, Adrian took Alina back to the Blackwell estate for another party, this time a summer garden celebration. As they walked through the same garden where Vanessa had confronted her, Alina marveled at how much had changed. "Remember when you brought me here as your fake girlfriend?" Alina asked, squeezing Adrian's hand. "How could I forget? It was the night I stopped lying to myself about what I wanted." They reached the fountain where Alina had sat, heartbroken and ready to run. Adrian stopped walking and turned to face her. And Elena's breath caught when she saw him reach into his jacket pocket. "Adrian," she whispered. "I know we said no grand gestures without discussion," he said, pulling out a small velvet box. "But I talked to your sister and your father, and they both gave me their blessing. I talked to Charlotte, who told me I was an idiot if I didn't do this soon. I even talked to my mother, who cried and said it was about time." He opened the box to reveal a stunning ring, the diamond catching the late afternoon sun. But what made Elena's eyes fill with tears was the band itself, which was engraved with tiny stars. "You told me once that you used to make wishes on stars when you were a little girl," Adrian said softly. "You said you wished for a life that felt like magic, for a love that was real, for someone who would see you for exactly who you are." He knelt down on one knee, and Elena's hands flew to her mouth. "Alina Carter, you are my wish come true. You're the magic I didn't know I was missing. The reality that's better than any fantasy, the person who sees all of me and loves me anyway. I know we started with a fake date and a business arrangement, but what we have now is the most real thing in my life." Tears were streaming down Elena's face as Adrian looked up at her with absolute certainty in his eyes. "Will you marry me? For real this time. No pretending, no acting, just us and this love that keeps growing every single day." "Yes," Alina sobbed, dropping to her knees in front of him. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger and then pulled her into a kiss that tasted like tears and laughter and the promise of forever. Around them, the garden erupted in applause. Alina looked up to see both their families watching from the terrace. Grace crying happy tears, Harrison beaming with pride, Charlotte jumping up and down with excitement, and Jenna recording everything on her phone. "Did you plan this whole thing?" Alina asked, laughing through her tears. "I might have coordinated with a few people," Adrian admitted. "Is that okay? I know we said we'd make decisions together, but I wanted this moment to be special." "It's perfect," Alina assured him. "You're perfect. Well, not perfect, but perfect for me." "I love you," Adrian said, kissing her again. "My fake girlfriend, my real love, my future wife." "I love you too," Alina whispered against his lips. "Though I have to say, this is way better than the $10,000 you originally offered me." Adrian laughed, the sound pure and joyful. "Much better deal for me too. I get you forever, instead of just one night." They walked back to join their families hand in hand, Elena's ring catching the light with every step. As everyone surrounded them with hugs and congratulations and demands to hear every detail of the proposal, Alina caught Adrian's eye across the crowd. He smiled at her, that same genuine smile she had taught him during their practice sessions. And she smiled back, knowing that every step of their unconventional journey had led them exactly where they were meant to be. The fake date had become real. The performance had revealed the truth. And the boss who had needed a temporary girlfriend had found his permanent future. It wasn't a fairy tale because fairy tales weren't real. But this love built on friendship and trust and choosing each other every single day. This was better than any story Alina could have imagined. 1 year later, they married in the same garden where Adrian had proposed, surrounded by everyone who mattered. As they danced their first dance as husband and wife, Adrian whispered in Elena's ear, "Thank you for agreeing to fake date me." Alina laughed. "Thank you for being brave enough to make it real." "Yes. Best business decision I ever made," Adrian said, pulling her closer. I'm pretty sure mixing business with pleasure is generally considered a bad idea, Alina teased. Then we'll be the exception that proves the rule. And they were. Because sometimes the best love stories start with a lie that becomes the truest thing you've ever known. With a performance that reveals your authentic self. With a single night that changes everything forever. Sometimes Cinderella doesn't need a fairy godmother. She just needs a boss brave enough to admit he's been in love with her all along. And sometimes, the girl who agreed to fake date a millionaire for one night ends up with something far more valuable than money. A partnership built on equality. A love built on friendship. And a happily ever after that's completely, perfectly, wonderfully real.